Hello, my name is Dennis, and welcome to my Trailer Park White Trash Mobile Home Kitchen. I really do live in a mobile home, in a trailer park, and this is my kitchen. What I want to cook for this video is a signature recipe of mine. It's pan-fried steelhead trout with tomatoes, some mushrooms, and mascarpone cheese. This is one of my special recipes that I came up with after watching an episode of the British TV series, the cooking series, Two Fat Ladies. It's been very popular among my friends. When I started making this dish, everybody wanted a copy of the recipe, and their friends wanted a copy of the recipe. It really started to spread very rapidly. So this is a very successful dish, and it's fairly easy to make. So the one thing I wanted to mention was the trout. Normally I don't like farmed fish. I don't think it has enough flavor to it. But there's one farmed fish that I really like. It's sold at the warehouse store, and that is their farmed steelhead trout. I think it's a delicious fish. It's got a very nice flavor. So that's the fish, the trout, that I'm going to use for this recipe. Having mentioned that, let's get into our ingredients here. What I have is, you need about 4 to 6 Roma tomatoes. I'm using 4 because these are very large. You want about 12 ounces total. You want 3 to 4 medium mushrooms chopped up. 5 to 6 basil leaves. I'll show you what we're going to do with these afterwards. A couple tablespoons of olive oil. 1 medium clove of garlic. I'm using a small amount of garlic here because I don't want the flavor of the garlic to overpower the flavor of the fish. 1/4 cup of dry Marsala wine. You can also use dry sherry if you want. And then you can either use a fish sauce. This is a fish sauce that I bought in a store many years ago. I haven't seen this in a long time. This is actually extract of anchovy. What the Two Fat Ladies used, Jennifer and Clarissa, they like to use anchovies. So for this recipe, I'm going to use a couple of anchovy fillets. And then you need, of course, your steelhead trout, about 1.5 pounds. This is closer to 2 pounds. This is a rather large fish. Some fresh ground pepper. This is homemade mascarpone cheese. I made it earlier this week. On my website, www.whitetrashcooking.com, there is a recipe now for homemade mascarpone cheese. And then finally, you just want some chopped Italian parsley for a garnish. So those are the ingredients for our dish. The next technique I want to show you is how to julienne basil. Take your basil leaves and just stack them up like so. Put the smaller leaves in the center and then just roll this up into a little roll. Almost looks like a little green cigar, like so. And there's 2 ways to cut basil. You can either julienne. I think of julienne as being little strings and chiffonade as being little threads. For a chiffonade, you would just cut very, very tiny, like 1/16, very tiny cuts. For a julienne, you'd cut them a little bit larger. So about 1/8 of an inch. And what happens is then you have these little strings. That's a julienne. Very simple to do. I learned under a chef a while back, and she loved things done as a chiffonade rather than a julienne. So those are our, see, these are really tiny. That's more of a chiffonade. This is a julienne. Our first step here is to peel the tomatoes. If you're not familiar with peeling tomatoes, it's very simple. You just stick a fork into the end of it. I usually use the seed end, the stem end rather, and then just plunge the tomato into boiling water. I have some rapidly boiling water here in this pan, and let it sit in here for about 20-25 seconds. You'll start to see the skin split. This is going to just cook the tomato pulp right under the skin, and that's what will allow the skin to separate off very easily afterwards. And then our second step will be to seed the tomatoes. I'm just seeing the skin start to split here, so I know this is ready to go. Again, this only takes 20 or 30 seconds to do this. All right, this is our fourth tomato here. I can see the skin splitting on this, so I can turn the water off and I'll show you that so you can see what I'm talking about. You can see how the skin is splitting here, and that makes it slide off very easily. It's very easy to peel these tomatoes. I'm actually going to put this in the bowl and let it cool for a minute while I do these other ones. So you can see how easily that skin just comes right off after it is boiled for 20 to 30 seconds. That's how easy it is to peel a tomato. I don't know that you have to, but I don't like the skin in this dish. So for a lot of these recipes where you're using tomatoes, they usually recommend that you peel them. And this is that last tomato. Okay, I'm going to rinse my hands here, and then we're going to seed those. To seed these, I just cut the tomato in half right across the middle, and then just push out, squeeze it somewhat just to push some of these, get some of these seeds out. You don't have to get out every one, but getting the seeds out just gets rid of something that could make the dish a little bit bitter. It also looks nicer by getting all those out. And then for this dish, what I'm going to do, I'll just cut out that stem end. Then I'm going to quarter these and put those back in my bowl. Okay, so that takes care of the tomatoes. Those are ready. We can now start working with our skillet. I've got my skillet heating on the stove. So I'm going to add my oil, and then my garlic. I'm just going to use a garlic crusher to get this into the pan. And that'll start sizzling right away. And then I want to add the marsala. I'm going to bring this up to the boil and reduce the liquid by about half. In the meantime, I'm going to add a couple of anchovy fillets, because these will cook in and they'll break down in the process. These will actually almost melt into our dish. You can see how those are, but I don't know whether you can notice that or not, but they're just completely broken up, those fillets. What the anchovies do is they just give a little more depth to the flavor of the fish, whether you use fish sauce or anchovies. It just adds more depth, I think, to the flavor. Gives it a richer flavor. Okay, I'm about ready to put the fish in next. And I'm putting the fish in skin side up, and I'm going to put the thicker part of the fish toward the center of the pan where most of the heat is. And I'm going to set my timer for 5 minutes. And let that cook over medium-high heat, and then I'll turn that over. So our timer is going off. This is one reason why I leave this skin on, is it's a lot easier to turn this over with the skin on. You want to turn that gently. Okay. And bring that back up to heat a little bit. I'm going to put the tomatoes in the pan, more or less around the edges. Oh, I wanted to sprinkle this fish with a little bit of black pepper. Put the mushrooms in the pan. Put the basil on top. And then put the lid on. And let this go for another 4 minutes. That'll cook the other side, and it'll also cook our vegetables. So our timer has gone off again. The last step is to add our homemade mascarpone cheese. Again, there's a recipe for this on the website. It'll be in the recipe archive section now. And then lid this again, and what that'll do is that'll allow the mascarpone to melt. I'm going to let that cook for 1 more minute. And there goes our timer again, so we are just about ready to eat. You can see how that mascarpone has started to melt in the skillet. That's going to be providing our sauce. So put your fish on a serving platter. That's a lot of fish. And stir this sauce in, the mascarpone, to get that blended in. Arrange the vegetables around the sides. And then spoon some of this sauce over the top. Oh, that looks beautiful. That is going to taste so good. And as a final step, just garnish it lightly with some fresh chopped basil. Not basil, but Italian parsley. So there is our Trailer Park White Trash mobile home cooking pan-fried steelhead trout with mushrooms, tomatoes, and mascarpone. This is a delicious dish. I don't think you can eat much better than this. So let's go have dinner. I can see myself in the reflection from the front of the lens, your filter.